parachute back, all ready for another flight to space. Every part of Falcon 9 is a part of a larger design that comes together to do one thing, and that's escape Earth's gravity.
And getting to space is the first step to building our multi-planetary future. At the top of Falcon 9 today, the crew is sitting inside Dragon Endeavour. Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the International Space Station. There are currently 5 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions: Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, Freedom, and our 5th and final Dragon, Grace, which just launched the Axiom 4 mission last month. Designed with safety as the highest priority, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit.
The Dragon spacecraft has
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
16 Draco thrusters. As you heard that great call out there, as the fueling continuing to make its way into the rocket. And those 16 Draco thrusters can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. Now, that doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit.
To date, Dragon has been to orbit 53 times, including 48 trips to the International Space Station and 18 human spaceflight missions. And as we mentioned earlier, today's Dragon, Endeavour, has been pretty busy, having also flown NASA's Crew 2 mission, Axiom 1, and NASA's Crew 6 and Crew 8 missions. Overall, for the Dragon fleet, this will be Dragon's 49th visit to the space station and its 19th human spaceflight mission overall, and the 5th Dragon flight this year. Dragon is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the orbiting lab, having flown 300,000 pounds of cargo and more than 1,000 experiments to space, as well as 70 crew members representing 20 countries. Our versatile Dragon spacecraft can autonomously dock with the International Space Station when outfitted with a docking adapter, which is just how it's configured for today's flight. And when it's not going to the space station and it's in free flyer mode, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola, as it was back during the Inspiration 4 mission. Another option we have is the Skywalker hardware, which supports extravehicular activities or spacewalks, as we did during the Polaris Dawn mission. And amazingly, there has been a Dragon in space for 1,358 consecutive days since Crew 3.
Now, with T-0 coming up in about 14 minutes or so, our teams are continuing to do a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and the Falcon 9 are ready, with fueling continuing to get underway. And again, we're monitoring that weather that the teams here at SpaceX are keeping an eye on and have been relaying up to the crew. So let's check in with Ronnie with the latest.
Thanks, Joseph. So as you've heard, we are still on track for an on-time launch today, and we're monitoring lots of different factors as we get closer to liftoff. Most importantly, both Dragon and Falcon 9, of course carrying our Crew 11 astronauts, continue to be healthy. You heard that we've wrapped up Stage 2 RP1 loading, and that Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading also wrapped up on time at about 16.5 minutes to go. The launch escape system is also armed. That's, of course, the system designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the unlikely event of an emergency. And the Eastern Range is monitoring keep-out zones along the flight ascent corridor and is tracking no issues for today's launch. Weather continues to be a watch item, so we'll keep an eye on that. But for now, we are go for the 6th mission of Dragon Endeavour. It is a fantastic milestone for Dragon, and here at SpaceX, we could not be more excited. So to add a little something extra to our celebration, I've got our Dragon plush hanging out with me here in front of Mission Control. Now, this guy is not the zero gravity indicator for today's mission, but do keep an eye out for that once Crew 11 reaches orbit. This is, though, a fun nod to all the successful flights that Dragon has made, and all of the crews that we have been so lucky to work with. I think this is a great way to celebrate today's flight milestone, and I really have appreciated joining you all. Thanks for joining me at the status desk for all of our coverage today. With that, go Dragon, go Crew 11, and I'm going to hand it back to Sandra for status update from Houston.
Thanks, Ronnie. That plush is cute. I'm going to have to get one for myself. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, teams continue to work around the clock to monitor activities aboard the orbital outpost. Leading the team inside the room today is NASA Flight Director Scott Stover. The team in Mission Control and the team in Hawthorne, as well as the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endeavour when they enter into joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft. It's essentially the neighborhood of the International Space Station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the International Space Station will perform a series of leak checks and then will work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew 11 to float into the space station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after docking occurs. When they enter the orbital outpost, crew will be greeted by the rest of the Expedition 73 crew and will come together for opening remarks. But for now, that's going to be all from us here in Mission Control for today, as the anticipation continues to build for launch in less than 20 minutes from now. So, how's it looking on the Space Coast, Daryl?
Well, we've got a mix in the weather. There's some clouds that are building, but so far still looking good, okay for launch. It's a watch item at the moment, and so we're keeping our eyes to the skies. Also, this is a first for our broadcast team right here. An astronaut who once sat right here where Nick is sitting as a commentator is now minutes from flying to space. Zena Cardman was once in this very seat, the one that Nick Hague is sitting in now, less than a year ago. She was supporting Nick as he launched with Crew 9. She was originally set to command that mission, but when Crew 9 had the shift and had the change up of assignments, she had to step back to help get the team off the ground. And here's what she said, Nick, after watching you and your crew go into space.
Every crewed launch that I have ever watched has really brought me a lot of emotion. This one today was especially unique. I think it was hard not to watch that rocket lift off without thinking, that's my rocket and that's my crew. But I also know that I'm not the only person who can think that. Of course, we have Stephanie Wilson here today, but I mean, there are many, many people who made this mission happen, and there are people on orbit who will be taking this capsule home. And it makes me very proud to know that I am one of many people who can say, that's my crew, that's my rocket. Makes me really proud, makes me feel very connected to this mission that we all get to take part of. Go Crew 9.
An emotion-filled Zena Cardman in that moment, and she is going to give us some words any moment now.
Dragon SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
Your thoughts on hearing that after you launched?
SpaceX, Dragon, displays are configured for launch. It is our honor, our privilege, and our choice to take part in something much greater than any individual, but it's the individuals who make this endeavor great. To each of you at SpaceX and NASA, to our partners at JAXA and Roscosmos, to family, friends, and mentors, you fly with us today. Arigato gozaimasu. Spasibo большое. Thank you. With gratitude and focus, Crew 11 is ready.
And more words.
Crew 11, sentiment is the same on the ground from everyone staying here. We have enjoyed working with you in the preparation for the mission. Looking forward to doing the same in flight. Good luck. Enjoy the ride.
And more words from Zena Cardman. We just heard from her live.
Yeah, it's like I started the show. There isn't any place I'd rather be than here today. What Zena said is so true, you know, and it's this palpable feeling that, hey, that's my crew. Those are my friends. You know, hey, that's my commander. And just to be here and know that, you know, I've done my small part to help support them along their way, and there'll be more support that happens in the future. And to be able to see behind the scenes everybody else that is contributing to that is, that's what makes this all so special, is it's not about the individual. Spaceflight has nothing to do with individuals. It's all about us working together.
100%. Well said, Nick. And kudos to both of you for showing an immense amount of class. You signed up to do this role almost immediately after getting into space, and we heard from you saying, I want to be there for Zena. Thank you for being here. And go Crew 11. And so with just 7 minutes to go, a little over 7 minutes, we want to send it back to Hawthorne for the final countdown.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Nick. And those were beautiful words from Zena Cardman. You can hear the emotions behind them and what they're looking forward to getting ready for launch. And they say, Crew 11, is ready. As you mentioned, about 7 minutes and change to go until we have liftoff, and we're still awaiting the final propellant loading to complete, and then we'll get into engine chill, and more milestones will be along the way. It's going to be about a 9-minute ride to orbit, and then Dragon in the second stage will continue to coast for a few minutes after that once the first stage and second stage have performed. You'll be hearing some of those performance calls as we get into that final countdown, and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on the trajectory, speed, booster, and performance, and the key milestones, but there are some other calls that you'll hear the crew make as well, especially after liftoff. The crew will report out a few number and letter combinations which mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two, 1A and 1B, are abort modes available.
Has started.
And right on cue for the engine chill that has begun. And those first stage abort zones, again, 1A and 1B for that first stage. Next are 2A through E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in, though we'll only hear that 2A call. And diverting a little bit from the other naming systems, we'll hear the call Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland. This means that the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort late in that second stage burn. You'll hear these different calls throughout the flight uphill along the way, and the performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer, and also the propulsion lead. So we're coming up on T-minus 6.5 minutes. We heard that the engine chill is started, and that means that that small trickle of fuel making its way into the engine to prime it
Stage
for
1 fuel load complete.
So we already heard that stage 1 engine chill has already started, which is a key process that prepares the engines for flight. Right now, the prop in the tanks is isolated from the engines. Sorry. The prop in the tanks has already started trickling into the Merlin engine pumps as the engines are chilling for the start sequence. And we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really, really cold. And we use this process to bring the engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. Shortly, coming up, we should also hear the call out for stage 1 RP1 load completion.
As you mentioned, engine chill is now underway. We're getting ready for those next call-outs that'll be coming up here shortly, as we are now almost 5 minutes away from liftoff, and that's where they're going to configure for terminal count. And that will be a call for Dragon to configure to terminal count and transition into internal power.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And at this point, the Dragon onboard computers
is in configure for terminal count.
Perfect, right on schedule, and those onboard computers now taking control of the spacecraft. You also heard the call out for pressurizing to give extra structural stability for the rocket as it makes its way uphill. So we're approaching now 4.5 minutes away, and then around that time, you'll hear, you mentioned it there, the strong back retract, and that'll allow provide access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for prop load and different gases being loaded on board. But right now, everything's starting to wrap up in Somia. It's exciting to get to this.
Strong back retract has started.
Exciting to get to this point of the countdown. As you heard it right there, the strong back retract is on its way.
So we have a great view on our screen of the clamp arms opening up just around stage 2 under Dragon in preparation for strong back retract. We have some really great views on our screen of that happening right now.
And you can see it just moving ever so slightly away from Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft, those clamp arms opening. And again, those late stages, those fuel lines starting to wind down their fueling procedures as we're about to hit T-minus 3 minutes until launch. Second stage loading will wrap up shortly after the first, and you've probably noticed those white clouds venting from around the rocket. That isn't smoke.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
That's condensation, as stage 1 liquid oxygen loading has been completed. As liquid oxygen warms slightly inside the tanks, some of it boils off, and that gas is vented to manage pressure. When the vented oxygen hits that warm Florida humid
Dragon
air,
is in terminal count and on internal power.
it instantly condenses into those clouds. As you just now heard, the Dragon now in prop load complete on into internal power. It's fully fueled. The rocket and Crew 11 are ready for liftoff. And this rocket now transitioning into internal power. The gas closeouts will also begin to purge all the feed lines and allow Falcon 9 to be isolated. And then they'll get vented overboard through the umbilicals and strong back retract.
So coming up in just under 20 seconds, we should hear the call out that LOX load will be completed on stage 2, which will mean that there will be 1 million pounds of propellant loaded onto Falcon 9 at that point. We're coming up on that call out in just a few seconds from now.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
Now that that's complete, we will vent down the TE, which will produce a white cloud off the side of the rocket, which is totally normal and expected.
Dragon is in auto idle.
Auto idle puts that rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over. And that's making sure the transition to the final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync with each other and configured for launch. We're now 90 seconds away from
Ground
launch.
gas closeouts have started. Expect loud venting.
And there's the gas closeout that Sonia was just talking about. And now inside 80 seconds from the launch of NASA SpaceX's Crew 11.
On countdown net, hold. We are standing down for violation of weather rules.
I'll try to sequence is aborted.
So as you've heard over the nets, that we did just have a hold called at the T-1 minute mark.
And that hold due to weather, that was something that we've been keeping an eye on. Our team here in SpaceX and Hawthorne, as well as NASA, we're monitoring that throughout today's broadcast in preparation for launch. But unfortunately, standing down looks to be the case as the weather has created that violation. But we'll continue to monitor and await for the news officially from the teams on the ground as that weather violation looks to come into play for launch today.
Dragon, SpaceX, bad luck on weather there. We just got clipped by a cumulus cloud right over the pad, so ended up scrubbing for weather. With that, you are go to proceed to 5.100 for launch scrub. We'll begin offloading the rocket.
Dragon copies all 5.100. Too bad, but we'll be ready next time.
And there you heard the call up to the crew that unfortunately the weather just not playing alongside with today's excitement of a launch for NASA SpaceX's Crew 11. But we have mentioned a couple times throughout the broadcast today that there are backup opportunities starting as early as tomorrow. 11:43 a.m. Eastern time is what the target time is for tomorrow's next attempt for launch for Crew 11, but it came right down to the wire, Somia, with that T-1 minute. But you heard on the loops there that it was just clipped, as they said, by a cumulus cloud to violate the weather rule. So unfortunately, today's launch attempt has been scrubbed due to weather.
You know, and there are 1,000 different ways that a launch can go wrong, and so we want to ensure the safety and reliability, even if it is a weather scrub. So we will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures and make their way back to crew quarters for now.
And you said the key word right there, and that is safety, the safety of the crew and everyone involved on this launch and opportunity, because that's what was talked about even in yesterday's press briefings with all the program managers and representatives of NASA, SpaceX, Roscosmos, and JAXA, is that we'll launch when we're ready and everything lines up the way it needs to be. And unfortunately, due to weather, not the case today. But to recap and look back at everything that Crew 11 has done, they walked right up to the T-1 minute to launch mark as everybody was safe and sound. They went through their procedures earlier today, did soup leak and checks, also did communication communications checks, and we're able to go all the way to the pad, climb aboard the Dragon spacecraft, and get ready for launch today. But again, unfortunately, due to weather, it will not happen, and we will target that next launch attempt, which again is going to be tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. We will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures, getting out of the spacecraft and making their way back to crew quarters. And to do that, we're going to head back out onto the space coast of Florida and join Daryl Nail and team as today's launch attempt for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 has been scrubbed due to weather. Daryl?
All right, thank you, Joseph and Samia. We appreciate your coverage there. And now back here with NASA astronaut Nick Hague. We just returned from being outside. We were planning to watch the launch right there from a nice viewing spot here at the press site, the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And unfortunately, even as we walked out, Nick, we got a sense that this might not happen because clouds had been building in and around the area. We had dark clouds overhead of us. We got up on our area to watch the launch and heard a Phase 1 lightning alert go off. And then my heart kind of sank a little bit because I thought that might be it.
Yep, then you see the clock stop.
Yes.
And you know it's happened. So it's disappointing. But there's a reason we do it, and that's to keep everybody safe.
It's so critically important. As you look at this shot here, you can see that just right over top, you've got some darkened clouds in the area. This was a result of a sea breeze that when we started the day, the launch weather officer improved our forecast to 90% go, but there was a 10% concern that the sea breeze was going to develop earlier in the day than originally forecast. And that sea breeze, which is this is very common here in Florida in July, once that air starts moving over the ocean and onto land and meets the warm air, our blue skies went to cumulus clouds scattered across the spaceport. And we just had one get just inside the 10-mile radius.
Dragon SpaceX, for awareness, we're looking at approximately 50 minutes for the prop offload time. So it should be approximately 1700 UTC when we are able to proceed with 5.100 and rotate the seats.
Dragon copies. We're looking at about 50 minutes for prop offload, so 1700 ETC for the rest of 5.100 and seat rotation.
Good readback.
And so what does real quick, what does that mean, Nick? They are going to rotate the seats?
Yeah, so it's important to know that right now you're looking at a fully fueled rocket with an armed launch escape system. And so the crew is in the same posture that they were in the 45 minutes leading up to launch. They've got to be in that posture until they can offload all that propellant, which takes about the exact same amount of time to offload as it took to put on, as well as disarm that launch escape system. And so this is a very active rocket right now, and they, that launch escape system, if something went wrong, even now it's still protecting them.
It's a great note there. But this is very much a dynamic situation even now with a scrub called. The teams have to work through their procedures to safe the launch pad, the rocket, and the capsule from being just minutes from launch. And we were in that posture ready for launch, and now we have to undo that, right?
Yeah,
very carefully.
You got to back out of all of that, and then once the rocket is defueled, we've got all the fuel out of there. We can disarm the launch escape system. You still need the pad team to be able to come and get out there to get into the white room and help open up that side hatch and get the crew out. And so the scrub process is not a quick one.
Just to finish a thought that I had said, and I think this view on the left basically shows you what the issue is. That's rain on the right half of the screen there. That's a rain cloud with rain coming down. And on the left hand, we were dealing with sun poking through the clouds on our side. We could literally see the clouds kind of going over top of our heads, getting close to the pad. And the standoff area is 10-mile radius around the pad for these dark clouds. And cumulus clouds. And that is a safety factor. We'll talk a little bit about that. That is because you don't want to send a rocket through a tall cloud like that could generate some energy from the rocket passing through it.
Yeah, just the same as if you're on a commercial airline flight, you don't necessarily want your pilot to take you through a severe thunderstorm. We don't want to do that with a rocket.
And so we are erring on the side of safety in this situation. But as Nick pointed out, the rocket that you are looking at is a fully fueled, ready to launch Falcon 9. As we now see, they are starting to allow some of the liquid oxygen to vent off as they begin detanking the rocket from its super chill liquid oxygen and its RP1, which is the kerosene-based propellant.
Dragon, SpaceX, propellant offload update, estimating about 45 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copies, additional 4 or 5 minutes for prop offload.
Now, as you recall your procedures for the crew, getting out of the capsule and getting back into their vehicles and going back, take me through the timeline of the scrub procedure.
Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward procedure. You're running the launch procedure in reverse, essentially, and so they're strapped in. The seats are rotated up in a launch configuration. As soon as they detank, they're going to disarm the launch escape system. So you're looking at it's 45 minutes to get rid of the liquid oxygen and RP1. Once that's off, then they'll be able to disarm the launch escape system, rotate the seats down. At that point, the arm will come over and the ground team, the pad team will be able to come up there. They'll open the side hatch and then help them get out of the capsule just like they helped them get into the capsule. So you're looking on the order of, an hour, a little bit longer.
And you want that rocket fully detanked?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got cryogenic propellants, oxidizers
moving, flowing,
and you want to make sure that that's all secure before you put people around it. That's the way the system is designed. It's different on other launch vehicles. Other launch vehicles, Soyuz I launched on, was fueled when we showed up to it. But while you're moving the fuel on and off, you minimize the number of people that are around.
That's exactly right. And the SLS rocket is similar in that it gets fully fueled and tanked, and then they bring the astronauts on board. SpaceX does it so they can do that tanking as the very last part of the mission timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And this also allows for a quick tanking, relatively speaking, for a rocket. And then allows you to detank it. But they're using super densified liquid oxygen as well. So you mentioned it. High energy systems are engaged here, and so we are now unwinding that as we proceed through the scrub procedure. If you're just joining us, we scrubbed this launch at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds until liftoff. We had a healthy rocket, a healthy spacecraft, we had a clear range, and we just had weather in the area, a cumulus cloud that just clipped the radius nearby within the launch area, the 10-mile radius. It got into that standoff area, and that is what caused the scrub for the day, because that is a safety measure to keep the crew that you see on the right side of your screen safe from any potential hazards that could develop as a result of the weather. And this view gives you a clear look at exactly where the clouds ended up now just about 10 minutes after when we were supposed to lift off, right over top of us. They were certainly in the area. We heard the lightning warning go off, and so we knew when we were standing out there watching this launch that that was a bad sign. But it's interesting. I've seen it go both ways, right? Where we get a launch forecast that is 85% no-go, but you find a hole in the clouds that's just 10 miles in radius, and it's all around the launch pad, and you can launch.
Yep.
This is the opposite of that. We had 90% go with only a 10% chance, but this is Florida in July. These things can pop up literally just from, you know, the daily sea breeze collision that we have over land.
Yeah, weather is dynamic, and we throw a lot of technology at it, we throw a lot of science at it, and it still baffles us sometimes. So the mental shift that you make when this happens, you've got to attempt to not make the mental shift immediately, because it is it is a live launch escape system that you're in, but inevitably there's the, okay, so once we get out of here, what's the next step? When is our next opportunity going to be? They've already been looking at weather predictions for days out, so they understand what the impacts to the phasing and the mission profile might be, the potential for bad weather in the upcoming days. And so they're already starting to think about, okay, so what's the next opportunity? And then having to get into the psyche of, okay, let's do this again, and it is to the T, to the minute, do it again. So it's very much a Groundhog Day.
All of it, every single minute of the, roughly what do we 6-hour countdown where it begins for the astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the backup days. Joseph mentioned those before. He tossed over to us, but it's worth mentioning again. Our backup opportunities are tomorrow, Friday, with a T0 at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage would begin at 7:30 a.m. on NASA Plus. The weather for tomorrow is just a little bit better than it was today, but what does that tell you, right? We scrubbed today. It's 85% go. The concern is the same, because the same pattern could develop. It's cumulus clouds building up and around the pad, but I will add this. We have moved a little earlier in the day, so the later that sea breeze develops, the better opportunity we'll have for getting some clear weather. If we can't do it tomorrow, then our next opportunity would be Saturday, August 2nd. We'd still have an 85% go for Saturday. Same concern with cumulus clouds here at the launch pad. In both of those cases, well, let me talk about the backup number 2. The T0 for that day would be 11:21 a.m. for a launch, and that would be an instantaneous window. And you can see the pattern. We move about 22 minutes early every single day that we delay from this particular T0 today. And of course, that's orbital mechanics. We've got time. You want to explain that one?
Yeah, sure. So the international. Oh. Yeah, no, you've got to wait for the plane of the orbit of the station to cross overhead, and it just works out each day that it's a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, if it had come overhead a couple minutes earlier today, they would have been able to launch. The weather would have been clear.
I just mentioned the backup opportunities. One thing about both of these next launch opportunities, unfortunately, we're going to really have our eyes set on the ascent corridor, because now there is a trough that is approaching a line of storms coming across the eastern part of the U.S., and it is going to make its way out into the ocean, and so that could disturb the weather along the ascent corridor, which is an area where if Dragon were to suffer some kind of anomaly, something that wasn't expected and needed to come off the top of the rocket, it would splash down along the ascent corridor. There's concern about the sea states, right? How much it's sloshing around is going to be out there in the ocean. You need good conditions, a baseline of conditions, in order to pull astronauts out of a floating capsule with a helicopter and a boat.
Yeah, it just shows the complexity, the scale of the problem that you're dealing with. It's not a forecast at a particular point, you know, on the surface of the Earth, you know, at the launch pad. It's, if you imagine this 3D trajectory of the rocket's path going up to orbit, you've got to clear all of that for weather, but not just clouds and rain and severe thunderstorms, but like wind shear and drastic changes in the wind direction can create problems for the rocket. And then, in case, you know, there was a need to return them early or to abort, you also have to clear the weather on the surface along that path as well. You know, just an immense amount of respect for the teams, you know, both at SpaceX and also at the, you know, the Space Launch.
The experts. Hope you got 37 minutes worth of stories, Nick.
And you're all in.
But
you're not second guessing.
Like I was saying, it's.
But you also have that moment when you're standing out there,
when you're sitting in that seat there.
There's the disappointment. There's the knowing you're
going
to
to
have
you got 37 minutes worth of stories, Nick.
I mean, the disappointment, not just for the,
like I was saying,
it's
the safest thing for us to do right now.
The team that's in quarantine just takes so much to do that when you're sitting in that seat, the families, you get the litany of goodbyes that you'll say again. There's a psychological, emotional toll of going through all of that again. And that's why, you know, earlier on
the team that's
in
but you also have that
broadcast,
moment,
I mentioned the site support team that NASA has in place, knowing there to provide support to the crew members, to the family. It's just so important. Even when something like this, you know, with relatively minor, not stressful something happens, there's still an emotional toll, and they're there to support everybody through it. And that's just because NASA recognizes the importance of that kind of support. And so I can't say enough about what they do.
So critical. If you are just joining us, you are watching live coverage of the launch broadcast for NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11. Today we scrubbed the launch attempt due to weather in the area. We had cumulus clouds building up within the standoff zone for
if you are just joining us,
weather like that.
You are watching,
as you can see from this shot right here,
the launch broadcast for NASA and SpaceX.
The weather finally made it right over the pad.
Today we scrubbed the launch attempt due to weather in the area.
While we have a fueled rocket on the pad, and we're looking, and in fact detanking at this moment, to bring the dynamic nature of the situation out there at the pad down to weather in the basically ground zero,
and so
reset everything, detank the propellants, offload them, pull the astronauts off, and get them back to crew quarters. We look ahead to our next attempt, which is tomorrow, Friday, August 1st, at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time.
Basically ground zero.
Our coverage would begin at 7:30 a.m.
Pull the astronauts off
for what we will now affectionately call
ahead to our
Launch
next
Groundhog,
which is
Launch Groundhog Day.
Friday, August 1st at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time.
And you can see there the start time is 7:35 a.m. So it's it'll save you 5 minutes if
for what
if you want to join us right at that moment. We'd love to see you again.
Launch Groundhog Day.
Nick, we'd love to see you as well.
Absolutely. So, you know, the thing that doesn't
and you can see there the start time is 7:35 a.m. So it's
the excitement, the anticipation.
If you want to join us right
they're
at that
going to turn
moment.
right around,
we'd love to see you again.
And it'll be there again tomorrow.
because
Nick, we'd
that's
love to
launch
see
day.
you as well.
And
Absolutely.
that's
so you know the thing that
you got a
doesn't
crew there, a
diminish
bunch of professional
is the energy,
space flyers,
the excitement,
and that's how they
anticipation.
approach the job, just like everybody in the profession.
They're going to turn right
Today's
around
launch day.
and
Get up for
it'll
it,
be there again
and
tomorrow,
that's what you work for.
because
and
that's launch day.
And
And
all of that
that's,
passion will be there again tomorrow.
You got a crew there, a bunch of professional space
All right, let's
flyers,
toss it back out
and,
to our
and
colleagues
that's how
at
they approach-
SpaceX in
approach
California.
The job, just like everybody in the profession. Today's launch day. Get up for it, and that's what you work for. And
Thanks so much, Daryl.
And all of that
So
passion
couldn't agree
will be
with you
there again
both
tomorrow.
more. What we're doing here is trying to make sure that we are effectively doing the
All right, let's
launch
toss it back out
procedures
to
in
our
reverse.
colleagues at
Right now we're
SpaceX
detanking Falcon 9, so we're taking about 1 million pounds of RP1 and liquid oxygen off the
Thanks so
vehicle
much, Daryl.
so that our crew can safely exit
So couldn't
the
agree with you both
spacecraft.
more. What we're doing
On
here
Monday,
is trying to
our
make
crew
sure
actually
that we
worked
are
through a dry dress
effectively doing the
rehearsal. So they
launch
went through a
procedures
lot
in
of the
reverse.
procedures that they
Right now
did
we're detanking
today,
Falcon 9, so we're
exactly
taking
as they
about
did
1
them today
million
in
pounds of
preparation for
RP1
launch.
and liquid oxygen
Now that we've
off
pulled that
the
hold due to
vehicle
weather, we're
so that our
standing
crew
down
can
for
safely
tomorrow.
exit the
We're actually just
spacecraft.
following through with the
On
rest
Monday,
of the dry
our crew
dress
actually
rehearsal
worked through a
procedures.
dry dress
The crew is going to
rehearsal. So they
exit
went
or
through a
egress
lot
the
of the
spacecraft,
procedures that they
and then
did
as we were just
today,
discussing, go back
exactly
into
as
that
they did them
quarantine
today in
process.
preparation
Meanwhile,
for launch.
our teams on the ground are going to go ahead and keep an eye on the health of the vehicle and our crew, of course, but also continue those vehicle side checkouts to make sure that we are ready for that next launch opportunity tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern. We've got about 30 minutes, a little bit more, waiting on that detanking. And obviously, you've got a view of Crew 11 there on the left-hand side of your screen, and down in the corner, you can see that Dragon spacecraft sitting on top of the rocket, still at LC 39A at Space Force Base in Florida. We're, of course, going to keep following the crew, keep a close eye on them as they follow through these egress procedures, and then make their way back to the crew quarters to maintain that quarantine environment that they've been in now in the lead up to launch for several days. Anytime we have crew on board the vehicle, safety is the most important thing. So while our teams continue through this detanking process, we are also going to continue our coverage and stay with our crew until we know that they have safely departed our launch pad. Of course, one of the other things we'll be keeping an eye on tomorrow is to understand how these weather systems evolve. Anyone who has ever joined us for a launch from Florida or followed along with our coverage of previous missions knows that weather, especially on the Space Coast, can evolve pretty rapidly. So as we're keeping an eye on everything for the next 24 hours or so in the lead up for launch tomorrow, we'll be watching the same things that we were looking at today. We're not just looking at weather at the launch pad either. We're also tracking the entire ascent corridor and the splashdown locations. In the very unlikely event that for some reason we had to abort our crew in flight, wherever Dragon exits the flight path to with our crew safely inside also needs to be a safe zone for recovery. So especially for these astronaut missions, it's really important that we have good weather kind of around the planet because we are moving so quickly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ronnie, as we continue to follow along with today's coverage of NASA SpaceX Crew 11 today and back here in Hawthorne. And you mentioned something that was the biggest key, whether it's prop loading or offloading, the procedures that were needed and required to do so, whether it was the static fire or preparing for actual launch day today. And that is safety. And that goes back to what everybody has been talking about throughout the mission, throughout the broadcast today, but even going into the pre-launch press conference yesterday with all the program managers, representatives from NASA headquarters, the International Space Station Commercial Crew Program, SpaceX, Roscosmos, and JAXA. That was the biggest key for them, is that we will fly when we are ready to fly, whether it's hardware or the weather that surrounds the crew itself. And that is unfortunately what has occurred today with that violation coming in. And to recap, that violation and that hold was called right up at the T-1 minute mark to launch. And there you can see a great view of the Dragon SpaceX spacecraft that is sitting up on top there with Crew 11 still inside. And Ronnie, you mentioned that we still have about a little about half an hour or so for that detanking of the Falcon 9 rocket. There you can see the crew just taking it easy, relaxing. They're just kind of waiting their turn, waiting their time is again to safely prep the rocket. You'll see the crew access arm when the time comes, come back into view and connect itself to the spacecraft as well. And then the crew will exit egress and then ultimately make their way back to crew quarters. And that's where we're going to stay with you this entire time and make sure that we have all the visuals to make sure that Crew 11 is safe and sound back in crew quarters. And again, we'll prepare for a launch attempt, which will again be tomorrow. And that's something that the programs talked about yesterday as well, is that unfortunately today did not work out, but we have opportunities, whether they need tomorrow, the 2nd, the 3rd, a stand down day for the 4th, and then beyond. So there's opportunities aplenty. And as Steve Stitch, the program manager for the commercial crew program, mentioned, that it's a good window of chance for this crew to make its way up to the International Space Station and so forth. So that's going to be the big one there. And we take a look at what's to come for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11. As mentioned, that the next launch opportunity will be at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, as we take a look at the launch coverage for NASA Plus. That'll start around 7:35 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll get to hear from Daryl, Nick, and the team as we go through these same procedures and get ready for the next launch attempt. But unfortunately, again, today, due to weather and that cumulus cloud rule that came in right at the T-minus 1 minute mark, right up into the very last moments of the countdown, that hold was called that we heard over the communications loops from the teams here in SpaceX, as well as the NASA teams monitoring closely, standing by as well. And you can see that those clouds are rolling on in over top of the rocket, the spacecraft, and the launch pad itself. So tried to get ahead of it, but unfortunately with the case, we'll try again tomorrow. But so far, everything in terms of the detanking and updates provided regularly with everyone on the loops, the crew being informed, the teams on the ground informed, and communication continuing to roll out as we follow along with the detanking of today's launch attempt for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11. And those on board, which are Commander Zena Cardman and pilot Mike Fincke, those two of NASA, Kimia Yui of JAXA, and Ollie Platonov.
SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating 25 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copy. 25 minutes for prop offload.
And a great update there that there's still about 25 more minutes left in that detanking of the Falcon 9 before that crew access arm and the procedures to take the crew and egress them out of the Dragon spacecraft can begin. But again, that Crew 11 team, there you can see them sitting comfortably in their chairs, just waiting their time and being patient with the process. Is everything working to maximize the safety of the crew, safety of the vehicle, and the area surrounding the launch pad itself. So unfortunately, again, scrubbing today's launch attempt due to weather, but our next attempt will be coming tomorrow morning at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time, and we look forward to seeing the crew work back to their launch procedures, the teams on the ground. And like Nick mentioned earlier, Daryl and Nick over on the Space Coast, that spaceflight is the ultimate team sport, and you need a lot of teammates to make things like spaceflight and launches happen. And that's what's being enacted right now, unfortunately, due to weather and a scrub, but that put into play with all the procedures needed and necessary. So that is where we are currently standing. So a little inside 25 minutes of the detanking in the Falcon 9 rocket, and we'll continue to follow along through the egress procedures as Crew 11 will then begin to make their way back to crew quarters.
We are...
So, of course, we are disappointed in that weather scrub today. But in a lot of ways, this is actually a really interesting testament to that huge team working together, like you just mentioned. We have, of course, Crew 11 safely on board Dragon and Falcon 9 right now. It's important to note that we had no issues impeding today's launch from either Falcon 9 or the Dragon spacecraft, or any of the ground systems supporting this vehicle. There are a lot of different engineering teams at play here. We obviously have everyone supporting the crew, the ground side teams. All of that was working as expected. Ultimately, the safest way to launch a rocket safely is to have done it before. So the fact that we're able to step through these procedures, we have these critical flight rules about saying when do we know this vehicle is going to be safe to operate, is a really important part of making sure that we execute every mission safely. So even though it is a bummer that we aren't able to go through with launch today, it is a really good sign that we saw no vehicle side issues, everyone working together. And calling it off when that was the right thing to do. So with that, while we continue to monitor this, like we mentioned, we are going to keep our coverage going all the way through until Crew 11 egresses the spacecraft and then exits the pad. But I'll toss it back over to Daryl and Nick for a little while.
All right, thank you very much, Ronnie. Back here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And a look out from the press site. When you look out east, looks like a beautiful day. It sure does. And it was. But over top of the land, we had those cumulus clouds bubble up, and they created some storm clouds that got just a little too close to the rocket. So the launch was scrubbed at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds. So close, but just not going to take the chance with that kind of weather in the area. Even the local warning system, paging system, let us know that there was a potential for lightning in the area, even as we were at the T-minus 2 mark. So, yes, while everything looks good out over the Atlantic, we continue to have our journey through a hot Florida summer day. We were scheduled for launch at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time. We had documented the crew getting ready for launch, starting around T-minus 4 hours and 10 minutes. And we walked that journey from suit up to drive out. We saw the crew ascend the launch tower there, get up to the top of the launch tower, get into their spacecraft, and prepare for launch. And all the systems, the high energy systems that came online, methodically going through the launch operations until we reached T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds, and then we got the call for the scrub. Launch weather officer David Tager kept the launch team informed of the developing situation and let them know that the sea breezes could be forming this mix of excuse me, cumulus clouds that we see in and around the area. And so now we have a dynamic situation on the pad, and the reason that we are still here is because we still have astronauts inside that capsule right there. 4 crew members, Zena Cardman, pilot Mike Fincke, Kimia Yui, and Oleg Platonov, who appears to be taking a nap. I would. I mean, at this point, what else are you going to do?
You got to wait for them to detank, and so that takes a little bit. It's actually fun. Some of the shot of the rocket that you see, the side view, it's almost like a fuel gauge because you can see where the frost is melted off of the side of the rocket and determine how much of the fuel is left in that first stage.
Yeah, that's a great shot. If we can take that wide shot there, that it almost serves as kind of a detanking gauge to see where the frost line is.
There you go. We're about halfway.
Yep, they're about halfway. Yeah, and it's going down. And they recapture that LOX and that fuel, of course, for the next attempt. You lose a bit of LOX because, after all, that stuff boils off.
Yeah, and that's why they wait to load it until so late,
right,
because it's so cold. It starts to warm and expand and boil off, and you don't want to waste it.
So the question now becomes, or the question that I will ask now is, what do the astronauts do after they get out of their capsule and go back to the astronaut crew quarters? This kind of served like a dress rehearsal. They have now had 2 of them, which is good practice for an operation like this. But you don't need to practice anymore. So what do you do?
Yeah, so you're gonna get out of the capsule. Everything runs in reverse all the way back to the ONC building to crew quarters. You're gonna get out of your suits. The suit techs, you're going to get those all cleaned up so that you're ready to try again tomorrow. And then I guarantee you that all 4 of them, the first thing on their mind is, okay, so when are we having the meeting to talk about, is tomorrow a viable launch opportunity? Is the weather good? Are the systems good? Is the phasing work so that we can get to where we need to be? Is that good? And then get the thumbs up to press for tomorrow. Or if things aren't lining up right, then when is the next opportunity after that? And of course, they're going to be checking in with family. I imagine they're probably going to be checking in with family on the ride back to ONC.
Absolutely. And have also heard, and I have seen crews do in the past, check out what's the schedule at the beach house. Because, you know, it might be an opportunity to go out there and kind of take the stress of the day and the scrub off for just a few hours.
If you're trying again tomorrow, then there's probably
not enough time.
Not enough time. You may want to try to tag up with family again. And if you're going to scrub and it's going to be a few days, then you can, hey, let's just have a quiet evening and step away from the crew quarters, go out to the beach house, put your feet in the ocean.
So too quick of a turnaround.
Yeah,
in this case.
It can be. It can be.
So in that case, maybe, you know, since there's 4 of them, they, you know, just have a little bit of a pickleball match, kind of let off some steam, and then get back to quarantine.
No, maybe not any athletic events. We don't want to risk any late injuries prior to launch.
I hear that, you know, it's a pretty somewhat safe sport, but you're right. You know, it is a sport at the end of the day. You know, Jessica Meir and Christina Cook, they play pickleball.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I have not got into that yet.
Your fellow astronauts.
Yeah. I'll have to pick their brains on the finer nuances of pickleball rules, because something about there's a kitchen involved, and there's
lots of rules.
There's lots of rules.
Well, we have a crew that plays here, Nick, and in fact, after our launch broadcast here, we're going to be going out. So if you want to learn,
okay,
you're welcome to join us.
Thank you for the invite.
In the 90-degree heat.
Still a beautiful rocket.
It is indeed, and it's going to stay there overnight. It can rain on the rocket. That's not a problem. We can have storms in the area. That's not a problem. After we detank it, of course. While we're sitting here and we've got folks watching, why don't we take some social questions?
Sounds great.
All right, let's do it. If you're just joining us, we scrubbed our launch earlier today at 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time, T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds. Our question comes from Hey Aviate. I want to be an astronaut. Any advice that will be really helpful apart from the usual requirements? I'm going to assume the usual requirements would be a STEM background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. But like, what gives people an edge these days? Because it's so competitive, Nick. Let's be honest.
It is.
It's highly competitive. How many people in the astronaut corps?
Less than 50.
Right.
Yeah. You know, in each class, there's maybe 10,000 applications for a dozen spots.
10,000 applications.
So it is very difficult. The minimum requirement is you need a STEM master's degree.
Okay.
And so you've got to get that foundational educational baseline.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that you wouldn't necessarily think about that get evaluated. For example, we're watching Crew 11 here. They've been strapped into these seats for about 3 hours now. They've got another 30 minutes or so. And so patience and the ability to have enough personal discipline to be able to sit still and wait for long periods of time. You know, it's some of those soft skills, the interpersonal skills, how you manage yourself, how you manage your interactions with the people on your team, that are really important when we bring people in for interviews and we look how they interact, because you're going to be in tight, confined places with your crewmates, and it's going to be stressful situations, and how do you manage that stress, and so those are things that are tough to put on a resume, but they really come out when you start to evaluate candidates that come down and interview for the job.
That's so key, and that's something I've observed with many of the astronauts who I've had the honor and the privilege to do launch broadcasts with. As we look at a screen that can show us, if you look closely, Nick, you can see the rain coming down now out there at the launch pad.
Oh yeah, you can.
So it did finally rain on the rocket. This is a sun shower though at the moment because the sun is shining on that rocket at the same time. It got a little rain coming down. But to the point that you were talking about, those soft skills, it's after having done a number of launch broadcasts with astronauts, it's like almost every single one of them easy to get along with, super smart, adapts to situations real quickly. I see these common characteristics in everybody. I say almost all because, well, you know.
Some people you have to put up with. I apologize.
You know, the jury is out. The jury's still out on this one. No, I tease greatly. This has been nothing but a pleasure since Nick walked in the door yesterday and we did our launch broadcast debrief. It's really great having you. It really, truly is.
You know, so the advice I would give somebody is how do you develop that? Because you can develop those soft skills. And it's trying to step out of your comfort zone. And you know, you become more adaptable if you've been in different situations, and try to figure out how to expand your comfort zone, and then trying to just be a great teammate. You don't always have to be the leader, you don't always have to be the follower, but what does my team need me to do? And you know, those simple things, if you focus on that over years, and it takes decades to grow into the people we select, you can get to where you need to be.
If you're seeking fame and glory, if that's the reason that it sparks you.
Wrong profession.
Wrong profession. That's right.
I think I said it earlier. It's not about this sport is not about individuals.
That's right.
It's team. And
that was never better exemplified recently in our commercial crew, and this is just an example that we're aware of, but Zena Cardman, the commander who's aboard the rocket and spacecraft today, her standing down and supporting you and your team when you launched after she got pulled off that mission. Another question in from Aqua. What does it feel like when the rocket is launched? We talked a little bit about this earlier in the broadcast, but this is like, talk me through like real, like, give me some sensory detail here.
Yeah, sure.
What are the feels?
Yeah. Before I do that, I want to double down on your last comment and just say, you know, so we put the spotlight on Zena because she's the one strapped into a rocket today. You know, Stephanie Wilson did the exact same thing, and I'm equally excited to see her strap into a rocket and get her flight. They are the epitome of the professionalism that the astronaut corps strives to be.
100%.
Yeah. So what's it feel like to so as you're walking to, we'll just take it, you push space on the elevator.
Going from the very beginning.
Absolutely. You ride the elevator up, and it's actually, the elevator goes fast enough that your ears pop, because you're going up a lot of floors of stairs, so you'll feel the pressure change in your ears, just like if you were in a big skyscraper and, you know, going from the bottom to the top. And then you step out of the elevator, and then, you know, it's just this, for me, it was this gentle breeze coming off the ocean, because you're so high up, you just get this nice cool breeze. And it's just green as you look out, green, and then the blue of the ocean. And then, you know, it's this metallic structure that's there, and, you know, so the launch tower doesn't really sway or anything. It's so beefy, you can see it there in the photo. And then you get into the gantry arm and you start walking out to the capsule, and then you know, you're surrounded by this, you know, this visual of this tube leading you to where you want to go. And so then that's where, like, emotion starts to color how you're seeing everything, and the white room is chilled down, it's cool, so that the vehicle's cool, and you climb in, and as soon as you cross that threshold of the side hatch, it feels, you know, before it was
like you've done it once, maybe twice, and it's unfamiliar, but it's still, you know, sensory overload to some degree. As soon as you get inside the capsule, you've trained for so long, it feels like home. You know, it's like you've spent, everything's exactly where it should be, and you feel comfortable. And so then, you know, the side hatch closes, and then at prop loading, that's really where, like I mentioned before, the rocket comes to life. The pumps start spinning up, you can hear the fuel flowing, you feel the vibrations, you get venting that's happening, and that's why when you feel like, so I'm on a thing. I'm not on a machine. I'm on this thing that's got a personality, that's got this life inside of it. And then at the moment of liftoff, there's just, you know, the engines light up and you get this subtle vibration and you feel the pressure of your body being pushed into your seat. Just, you know, your back is being pushed in, and it's you know, that all the you know, the millions of pounds of thrust that are happening, and it's just squeezing you in that seat, and it's just continuing to push you in that seat as you kind of creep off it's smooth. And so if you've been in an electric car and somebody just kind of slowly presses the accelerator and then just keeps mashing it until it's all the way down, eventually you're pressed into your seat and you're accelerating, and it's like that, but you don't stop for 9 minutes. And you go
the
from
feeling of acceleration goes that long.
You know, you've got staging in the middle, so you know it starts at 1G, and then you build up to 4.5, and then it drops off during staging to nothing for a few seconds, and then it starts back up again and builds up, and then it stops, and you're in space. And so those 9 minutes are just this amazing roller coaster ride that is like super smooth, with a little bit of vibration. And the whole time you've got these windows that you can look outside and watch it all happen as the Earth kind of disappears down below. And yeah, it's just phenomenal. I wish everybody could do it.
No doubt. I wish I could do it. That is, what a great explanation of what you experience from beginning to end. If you're just joining us, we are live with launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11. The launch to the International Space Station scrubbed for the day. You see the weather in the area caused a scrub at T-1 minute and 7 seconds, just at 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time. The crew is inside the capsule at the top. They are safe. They are waiting for the completion of detanking the rocket of its highly energetic propellants, which we are currently doing now. Just should be just another 15 minutes or so. Our next attempt for today's launch, provided that after they review the data from today's scrub, should all that look good and check out, the next opportunity to launch is August 1st at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Weather for tomorrow is 85% go. The only area that is a watch item, that is a significant watch item, is the weather that's going to be disturbed along the eastern seaboard after we get a trough of disturbances make their way into the eastern Atlantic. Going back to your description about launching, what are the emotions, right? So when you first launch, I'm imagining when it lights and that first thrust off the pad, like the anxiety, a little fear. What are you feeling?
You feel, you know, for me, it's the swirl of emotions up to that point. I've got a swirl of emotions leading up to it, where there's this desire to be perfect, right? I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to let down the people that spent the better part of a couple years training me to be perfect in the moment. So you don't want to make mistakes. There's this anticipation of the unknown, especially on your first launch when you don't know what to really expect. But even on subsequent launches, it's the unknown of what could happen. Just that heightened sense of vigilance that you need in order to be able to react in the moment appropriately. There's the joy of, like, I'm getting to do this thing that I love to do and I've wanted to do, and now's this moment. So there's just intense excitement and joy.
Yeah.
There's a tinge of sadness because everybody you love is down on the ground and you just said goodbye, and you're not going to see them for a long period of time, and so it's this blender of emotions. But as the clock ticks closer to T-0, the focus starts to narrow in, and it becomes, okay, now I'm in operator mode. Let's execute. We got a mission to do, and so at the moment you lift off, you've got a radio call, and you've got radio calls you need to make all the way up just to confirm what launch abort phase that you're in. And all of that, and so you're trying to absorb and monitor everything that's going on, and listen to and see what the vehicle is telling you.
And you have to put that swirl of emotions off to the side, and do a job in that extremely exciting moment.
And that's one of the, that's a skill you have to have in the job, because it's not just launch that happens. It happens all the time, and so we train to be able to stay focused on the task at hand, but then also recognize that you can't just bottle that stuff up. So you got to process it at some point, and so finding the right ways to process that and the right moments to process that.
Fascinating to listen to everything that goes in to a launch day, to the launch moment, the emotions, the feelings, and the preparation, the skills required to get through it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Nick. Let's toss it out to SpaceX in California for our continued documentation and coverage of today's scrubbed launch attempt.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Nick, and for all that insight, especially with the process as intricate as this one, with the detanking continuing for Falcon 9 as, again, today's launch attempt for Falcon 9, or for Crew 11, NASA SpaceX Crew 11.
Starting copies. Go to disarm LAS per section 2 of 5.100.
And that was some great call-outs right there from up in the crew capsule, the spacecraft, is Crew 11 receiving updated information from the teams here on the ground, and the core here in Hawthorne communicating the step-by-step procedures needed to detank the vehicle in Falcon 9, and then again they'll go into those procedures of bringing the crew access arm, disarming the launch escape system, the ground support teams that helped Crew 11 into the vehicle. They'll become on site and then help them out of the vehicle as well, and then we'll stay with
T.Dragon disarming launch escape system.
And they'll help with them
we're with you.
all the way down to their eventual return to crew quarters. So again, there you heard that the disarm of the launch escape system is underway, and that was the voice of Commander Zena Cardman copying those commands from the core and communications teams in SpaceX here in Hawthorne. So that's where we're at the moment, but still a couple more steps to go, and they've given continuous updates on the process of how long it would take to detank the Falcon 9 of both the RP-1 that rocket-grade kerosene, as well as the liquid oxygen tanks necessary to then,
Dragon
again...
SpaceX launch escape system is disarmed. You are go to open visors and then proceed to Section 3.
Dragon copies. Go to open visors and proceed section 3.
Crew arm engage sequence has started.
And again, great communications there as you're looking inside the crew access arm as it's beginning to swing back towards the Dragon spacecraft. And you saw just moments before that, Crew 11 being issued the okay to open up their visors and begin their process, continue their process of what will be egressing or exiting the vehicle here in just a little while. But again, that crew access arm slowly but surely making its way, be buttressed up against the side of the Dragon spacecraft as we continue on our...
SpaceX Dragon, ready for seat rotation.
Copy, crew are ready for seat rotation. We will initiate that now.
So again, great communication happening between the team in SpaceX and Crew 11 on board the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft as today's launch attempt has been scrubbed due to the cumulus cloud rule, and another launch attempt will be coming tomorrow. And that launch attempt will be at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time. And of course, with Daryl, Nick, team out in Kennedy, the team here at SpaceX, and at NASA's Johnson Space Center and the International Space Station Flight Control Room, we'll bring you right back and get you prepared for another launch attempt for Crew 11. And again, that'll be tomorrow, August 1st, as we turn over to a new month at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time. And that's where they will hopefully begin their journey then en route to the International Space Station and sync up with their Crew 10 colleagues, as well as those of Soyuz MS-27. And that crew of 7 on board the International Space Station will become...
Dragon SpaceX, seats are in the upright position. We will be working through steps with the closeout team to return to the pad tower and open up the side hatch. I'll keep you abreast of their progress.
Dragon copies.
And a great look inside that crew access arm as it has now made its way right up against the side of the Dragon spacecraft, and Crew 11 sitting comfortably with their visors open, just recently given that command. The seat rotations have been issued, and they are now stretching their legs. You can see Mike Fincke flexing the ankles a little bit and preparing to egress the capsule and Dragon Endeavour here in just a few moments. But to go back to what we were saying, they were heading up to the International Space Station, where currently a crew of 7 will look to welcome in this cadre of 4, including the commander of Expedition 73, Takuya Onishi of JAXA, his best friend, Kimi Yui, as a member of Crew 11. So it'll be the first time in several years that 2 JAXA astronauts have been on board the International Space Station together. And what better way to do that than with your best friend that gets to come up and pay a visit with you. But NASA's Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, along with Johnny Kim, also on board, along with Roscosmos cosmonauts Kirill Peskov, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Alexei Zubritsky, will anxiously await their arrival once they can go for that second launch attempt, which again will be tomorrow, August 1st at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time, as today's attempt was scrubbed due to weather. So we're going to continue to follow along with the detanking procedures that should be wrapping up here pretty soon. As you saw, the crew access arm has swung back into place. The ground support team will make its way up towards the spacecraft to help the crew exit, egress, as they say, the capsule as well, and then we'll stay with live coverage all the way up to the crew's return to crew quarters, where they will remain in quarantine. And that's what Daryl Nail and Nick Hague have been discussing of those procedures and how things will shape up and ready to turn the page for another attempt to tomorrow. So as we continue to follow along and keep updates with the egress of NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 and the next crew rotational mission to the International Space Station, I'd like to join and bring in my colleague here in Hawthorne for another update in Ronnie on all things with the spacecraft Falcon 9 and the egress procedures that are currently ongoing.
Thanks so much, Joseph. Yeah, so we're obviously following very closely as we move through these detanking and then these upcoming egress procedures. For those of you who have been following along with this mission since we picked up our launch coverage today, you can really tell that we are doing everything that we did in the lead up to liftoff now just in reverse. So a couple of minutes ago, we heard the call out that the launch escape system has been disarmed. To give you a little bit more color there, the launch escape system consists of 8 Super Draco thrusters, in addition to a lot of avionics and control systems that support them. And those engines provide fault-tolerant propulsion for Dragon's launch escape system. In the extremely unlikely event of an emergency, those Super Draco engines can actually power Dragon off the top of Falcon 9 and away from the launch vehicle in less than 8 seconds. To be able to do that, obviously those engines are extremely powerful. So we only want that system armed and capable of doing that emergency exit procedure when it's absolutely necessary. Our flight rules dictate that that is necessary anytime we have propulsion and astronauts on board the vehicle. So right now, knowing that we're clearing the completion of that detanking process, it was safe to go ahead and disarm that launch escape system. Now, of course, on your screen, you've got this view of the crew access arm, which is the primary way that our astronauts walk out from the white room, to the white room and then enter the Dragon spacecraft. But it's important to note that all these systems we have working together, the Super Dracos that are part of the LES.
The crew arm engage sequence is complete. Crew arm is fully engaged and pinned.
Confirmation there that we've got the crew arm fully engaged and ready for our astronauts to begin that egress process. Obviously, that's going to start by having our ground support team come back up and help with that hatch opening procedure. And I'm getting confirmation here that offload has been completed, which again is what we expected when we heard that we were okay to disarm that launch escape system. It's really worth noting, though, that Dragon is a tremendously capable spacecraft. It is not just a capsule housing these astronauts. We have maneuverability available to them through the 16 Draco thrusters that we used to orient the spacecraft during the mission. We obviously use those, rely on them really heavily as we do all of the maneuvers in our approach to the International Space Station. And then those Super Draco thrusters that are part of the launch escape system, as well as all of the avionics, the controls, everything that our astronauts are using to monitor the vehicle progress, both now in more off-nominal situations like this, where we've had a scrub due to weather, but also throughout their flight to the International Space Station. As we were talking about earlier, our crew today was scheduled for about a 38-hour trip to the International Space Station. All of the information that they're getting from our mission control team is displayed inside of Dragon for them. Still seeing little bits of rain. One of the things that we talked a little bit about earlier, but is still really interesting, anytime you are leaving Earth, we're monitoring weather not just at the launch site. It's really all the way along the ascent corridor. Obviously, Falcon lifts off and then does a gravity turn so that we can get up to space going 17,500 miles an hour horizontally. We're not just going up. So we're moving through a huge portion of the atmosphere on our trip to space. And the weather for that entire ascent needs to be clear. And again, if we were going to leverage that launch escape system in flight for any reason, you'd hear on a typical ascent, our crew will call out certain abort modes where the the spacecraft may have to eject to. In the instance that anything were to go wrong, that weather also needs to be good. We need to be able to get to the crew, make sure that they're healthy. And then, of course, anytime we have crew entering or exiting the vehicle, we're working those carefully rehearsed and fine-tuned procedures like we're seeing them step through now. The view you have on your screen right now is Historic Launch Complex 39A. SpaceX has made some modifications to the crew access tower that you see over there. If you followed along with any of our social media channels or on previous webcasts, you know that when our astronauts are ready to board Dragon, they actually go to an elevator inside that tower and hit the space button before going up to that crew access arm, which is currently bridging between the tower and just behind Dragon on your screen. Right now, our ground support teams are preparing to ascend the tower and go over, and like I mentioned earlier, we're going to help with that hatch opening and then help our crew egress the spacecraft. From there, they'll be going back into quarantine. It's important that astronauts maintain that quarantine environment, often away from friends and family in the lead up to launch, so that they're 100% healthy when we get them up to the International Space Station. So to maintain their well-being ahead of our next launch attempt, which is currently scheduled for tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern, they're going to go back into that quarantine environment. Getting some nice views of Crew 11 in their seats there. Earlier on, we also heard discussion that we were rotating our seats back into the vertical position. We rotate our astronauts to lay on their back ahead of liftoff because it is more comfortable when you are experiencing the high G-force loading of ascent to have that pressure go through your chest. So anytime you see a photo of an astronaut in Dragon or any historical spacecraft, you know you see them in that reclined position. The seats on Dragon are another really nuanced and sophisticated part of the spacecraft. They have the ability to do that rotation and then move themselves back into the horizontal position in the event of an egress like this. But we also heard discussion earlier that we can remove those footrests to give the crew some additional room inside the spacecraft for their trip to the International Space Station. Seeing some smiles from the crew there. And of course, we're following along very closely here, not just with our coverage, but of course the entire mission control ground support team. Everyone's keeping a careful eye on all of these procedures because anytime we have astronauts on board the spacecraft, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep them safe. Again, all of this is rehearsed during dry dress. And you can see our astronauts are pretty comfortable with it, right? They seem like they're having a pretty good time, waiting to exit Dragon, go back, get a little bit of rest, and then try again.
And to that point too, Ronnie, it's great to see them with those smiles too. This has been a crew that we heard in earlier portions of the broadcast today that they've all been coming from different missions and different assignments, and to have that flexibility and to be a team player is a crucial component of becoming an astronaut and a cosmonaut, and seeing those smiles for them and knowing their journey and their path and their history as a NASA astronaut or a JAXA astronaut or Roscosmos cosmonaut. You know, this is just another step in that path and that journey that they've had along the way. So it's great to see them with all smiles. They're a crew that is very emotional, very thankful, very supportive of each other and of the mission, but also very happy. And I hear a lot about each crew member has a very unique sense of humor. So during that 39-hour of phasing, I can only imagine what the jokes were going to be like exchanged, the stories that were going to be told. And for two of them as first-time flyers experiencing it for the very first time, and Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos and Zena Cardman, the commander of NASA. So to see them sharing smiles, telling stories, and just knowing that another opportunity awaits them around the corner. Again, tomorrow's next opportunity at 11:43 a.m. Eastern certainly has them in bright spirits, it seems. So we'll continue to stay with our live coverage of the egress procedures of NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 as their launch opportunity this morning unfortunately comes to a close due to a weather violation. They were scheduled to launch at 12:09 a.m. Eastern time, but that violation came into play right in the key moments of the countdown, almost right up to T-minus 1 minute left in the countdown. They called the hold and addressed the crew that weather, unfortunately, was not cooperating with them and that they would have to stand down from today's launch attempt and make their way back to crew quarters after detanking and safely egressing the vehicle for the next launch attempt. But again, opportunities tomorrow and for the foreseeable future, so there are opportunities aplenty here in the near foresight for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 team. So with that, we'll depart from Hawthorne for the moment and head back out to the Space Coast and check in with Daryl and NASA astronaut Nick Hague.
Thank you very much, sir. We've been watching the crew. I'm here with Nick Hague, NASA astronaut. And in a moment like this, when I look at the crew biding their time, waiting patiently for the moment to egress out of this capsule and get back to the astronaut crew quarters, I see Mike Fincke talking a lot. In a moment like that, it's pretty good to have somebody who's, you know, a jovial, talkable fellow like Mike Fincke who likes to crack jokes. And
yeah. Now, you know, humor is a great tool.
and being able to find the humor in just about any situation is a true talent and a benefit to the team. So they're sitting here. You saw the gantry arm is back up to the capsule. Pad teams getting access. They're going to pop open the side hatch here and get them out of the capsule. So now's the time they can relax a little bit. They're in a safe state, and there's definitely, they've turned the corner and they're looking for, okay, what's our next opportunity?
Next to Mike Fincke is Cardman, the commander of this mission. Is it the commander's responsibility to kind of regroup the team emotionally? I mean, these are professional astronauts and a cosmonaut, so I know they know how to gather themselves and gear up for another attempt. But it's also an opportunity to lead.
Yeah, absolutely. The every person on the crew is responsible for themselves and also feels a sense of responsibility for the team. The commander's the one that ultimately is accountable for the well-being of that crew, the well-being of that spacecraft, and making real-time calls. And so the commander's job is to read the room and understand what the team needs in that moment. And maybe that you need to recage, maybe it's crack a joke, maybe you've got to read the room. It gets back to those soft skills I was talking about before.
We are awaiting the completion of detanking of the Falcon 9 rocket. A moment that, when it arrives, will allow for the astronauts to egress from the Dragon, make their way across the platform and down to their waiting Teslas, where they will be driven back a 20-minute drive across the spaceport under security escort back to astronaut crew quarters. And we hear the call that detanking is complete. Again, detanking is complete. That paves the way for the closeout crew. So a little hand battle there between the commander and pilot. Paves the way for the closeout crew to come up and ascend the tower, make their way into the blast danger area, and help the astronauts make their way out of the spacecraft. And there you see at the base, here comes the closeout crew. Have the first member of the closeout crew making their way across the access tower. And this is actually the final steps up to the 275-foot level, where they go into the crew access arm. At this point, Nick, you can say that the rocket has been safed.
Yes. You've detanked the rocket, the launch escape system is off. As soon as those two things were complete, then they were able to rotate the seats and pop visors and essentially sit there and wait for the pad crew to show up. We saw pad crew walking down the arm. They'll put some safety restraints in place to secure the gap between the arm and the capsule, and pop open that side hatch.
Dragon SpaceX, the team has reached the White Room. We're now beginning preparations for configuring the White Room and side hatch opening.
Dragon copies.
And sounds like the hatch. Oh no, selfie. It's selfie time. Kimiya's got his tablet out and he's taking a selfie. I'm not sure where that picture will go in the grand scheme of pictures that they'll be taking, especially with a launch day, a real launch day where everything works out.
Yeah, but on a real launch day,
you don't have time for something like this, right?
Yeah, and you wouldn't risk taking the tablet out and potentially dropping it, and then having to launch, the pad crew having to come back in and dig that out. So this is a unique opportunity to get some photos you might not otherwise get.
not the easiest thing to work with a tablet like that when you're wearing big gloves.
Right. Yes, those gloves. And yes. So now they're doing it again. Yeah, those gloves are touch sensitive.
Yes.
You can use them on the tablets and they work, but they do look pretty bulky.
Yeah, and your fingers, you know, there's some layers associated with it, so you're not as dexterous as you would be otherwise. And you get used to it though, because you spend a lot of time in training sitting in the suit, working in the capsule, weeks at a time in Hawthorne out in Los Angeles.
As the closeout crew brings their equipment necessary to unseal the side hatch, open it up, and get the crew out. The astronauts have plenty of time for conversation, talk about the next launch attempt, take selfies. So you launched 3 times, and you never had a weather scrub?
Never had a weather scrub.
That is fortunate.
Yes, indeed. We had a delay. We didn't actually scrub. We had a delay because of a hurricane coming through.
Oh, right. But we saw that
days
well
in advance. So
yeah,
never got to the point where we did that. Although, you know, and the point was brought up earlier, every crew practices a scrub when they do dry dress.
Right.
And so you get to go through the procedures, minus all of the waiting for the prop load to go on and the prop load to come off.
There have been astronauts who have scrubbed due to weather 5 times.
Yeah.
Famously, our former NASA administrator, Bill Nelson, tells that story all the time about 5 scrubs to get to launch. I thought, oh, man.
It's space is hard. It's you know, there's a lot of factors that going into everybody feeling comfortable that it's safe to launch.
Is there any way to put in a food order back at astronaut crew quarters?
Food will be waiting because you got to remember they suited up almost 6 hours ago.
They're
so
hungry.
it's been a while since they've had a meal.
Right.
There'll be food waiting. And the staff at crew quarters does an amazing job of making sure that you've got the right food, it's nutritious food. They do an amazing job that extends not just from crew quarters, but also gets into the food system on board the International Space Station. And yeah, it's just, again, every time we talk about something, there's another facet of, hey, there's this team, and they are experts in their field at doing what they're doing, and what they do is so critical. And you know, the food lab is another example of that.
I hear great things about the chef over there and his ability to make these meals that are requested, you know, by people from other countries, right? The international astronauts asking for cuisine from their homeland, and I hear they do a pretty good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see the closeout crew on the left. They are securing the white room to the capsule, and then they'll begin unbolting the fasteners that hold that side hatch in.
Yeah, you want to mind the gap. That's a little bit of a drop.
Yeah, that's a gap. Just 275 feet straight down. And so this crew, of course, is planning on a 3+2 handover. Now, does that calculus change?
Well, you saw the handover is going to be influenced by weather as well, because you have to have good weather to land. So even if we can launch them, Crew 10's got to have good weather to land. And so you'll see that calculus change. the importance of the handover activities and being able to have one crew, essentially show the ropes a little bit to the other crew before they leave is still critical. But that is also tempered with, well, we have a window of good weather here, or we have a window of bad weather there, and trying to find that spot, that sweet spot to bring everybody home.
Lots of moving parts with regards to the planning in that regard.
Yeah, Mother Nature gets a vote.
Every time. So they must maintain quarantine along with the support team. How does that factor into whether or not they get to see or talk to family in close proximity?
Yeah, so the family will maintain quarantine. The immediate family will maintain quarantine.
They didn't break it after
up and
they
through
drove off?
the launch, so that if something like this happens, you can still be able to, go to the beach house and have dinner with the family if you've got enough time to do that kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, quarantine it's serious business because we're trying to make sure that we keep the crew safe on orbit, and we know that we don't want to take sickness up there. So again, there's another team that monitors all of that and make sure that we're able to maintain it.
For pilot Mike Fincke, it's been 14 years since he last flew to space, doing so aboard STS-134 in 2011. The second to last flight, the penultimate flight of the space shuttle program. And he said that he's looking forward to getting back after all these years to the International Space Station. It will have to wait another day. That's going to be really interesting for him because he was telling us that he saw Space Station here on the ground, here on Earth, the segments of this incredible orbiting laboratory, which is the size of a football field in space. He saw all those parts and modules on the ground, helped assemble it, but did not see them, I think, living in it continuously at that point, right?
No, we would have been continuous at that point, but the configuration has changed a lot since his last visit.
I see.
And we've added new modules. For example, the beam module has been added recently, or the NanoRacks airlock is another feature that's been added recently. The
modern modules that have been put in.
Yes, modern facilities that have been experiments that they've been testing out, or commercial partners have been putting on board. The international commercial crew coming and going has dramatically changed the layout and just the way we live in the station from a Node 2 perspective, and so it'll be different than what he was familiar with the last time he was there. So as familiar as he is with it, the flow of life will be different on board. It was something that was interesting being on board with Don Pettit and Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. From a U.S. crew perspective, we all knew the station from previous flights, but we all knew it in different configurations and had different expectations. So it was interesting to see all of us adapt to the new way to live on the station. It's alive.
Yeah, yeah. So we got a question that has come in from Joseph Zashevsky, our commentator in Hawthorne.
Okay.
He has a question. He wants to know, do you mix up the procedures tomorrow? So, for example, instead of Eggs Benedict, do you eat oatmeal? Do you put your left shoe versus your right shoe? He's just curious.
Yeah, that's a personal question. Or how superstitious are you?
Right.
Do you need to change up something just to to turn the tide of fate your direction.
Or do you not want to change something because you're concerned it might throw your own personal, preparation
Yeah,
off?
and for me personally, it was I keep a routine consistent. So even during quarantine and the weeks leading up, it's not like I'm trying to have every meal I'm going to miss crammed into 2 weeks, the meals I'm going to miss over 6 months. It's having some level of consistency. What do I normally have for breakfast? What do I I don't want my body to go through that kind of shock.
Right, because you can order anything, but it's probably safer to go with some food that you're used to having.
You order anything, and everything carries some consequence.
Thank you for your question, Joseph. And thank you for the job that you and Samya did today, and Ronnie as well.
Yeah, it was outstanding.
Joseph and Samya, I believe, are new to our crew launch broadcast. So we have a question coming in from the cameraman who's asking about the devices that are strapped to the knees of each of the astronauts.
So it's called a satchel. In the aviation world, you'd have a knee board so that you could pilot an aircraft, and then also have a place to draw, write down, take notes. This is a little beefed up version, so it has the knee pad feature where there's paper that you can take notes and write things down so you don't forget them. But then underneath it, there's that satchel that contains a headlamp. It's got a charging cord for the tablet. It's got a Valsalva device so that you can clear your nose, earplugs if you need them, headphones if you need them. So it has the personal equipment that you might need while you're launching or just operating inside of Dragon, both uphill and downhill.
Thank you for your question. If you're just joining us, we are walking our astronauts through the scrub procedures for an attempt at launch at 12:09 p.m. Eastern today. We scrubbed out at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds due to weather. A violation of a weather constraint for cumulus clouds too close to the launch pad. Hey, we got a question in from Say Richie. My 5-year-old Boston, who is numbers obsessed, wants to know how high the rocket will go. How high would the rocket go? So he wants to know about the altitude, which I'm calling back to what you said about the rocket launching straight up initially, but then turning to the horizontal, because at the end of the day, you're going into orbit rather than trying to reach some faraway destination.
Yeah, so the profile that the rocket's going to take, and we see the side hatch opening up, and everybody's celebrating.
Yeah. All right, hooray!
Fresh air.
Yeah.
Dragon SpaceX, with the hatch open, we'll be handing you off to the closeout team for egress. See you soon.
And so the rocket's going to initially go straight up to get some clearance from the ground, and then it turns horizontal. And at about the 200-kilometer mark, it's turned horizontal, and all of its thrust is trying to accelerate it downrange. It's trying to cover ground on the Earth. And it essentially is coasting and slowly falling back down to the Earth until it's reached that 17,500 miles per hour, at which its arc of its fall matches the curvature of the Earth. But it's only a few hundred kilometers up. And then as we spend the next 40 hours, or what they would have spent 40 hours rendezvousing with the space station, they would have raised that 200 kilometers up to the 400 kilometers or 250 miles that the station lives at. So it's not that far up. It's the distance between major cities in the U.S. It's drivable if you could drive there.
Cape Canaveral to Miami.
There you go. It's not that far. And what's even more impressive is if you've flown on a plane and you look out the window of a plane, you can see a really long way, but you're looking the entire distance through the atmosphere. The space station, when you look down, you're looking a really long way, but it's only the last few miles that you're looking through the atmosphere. And so the Earth, the surface of the Earth is really clear. And so it doesn't feel like it's that far away. If you fly over New York City, you can see Central Park in the middle of Manhattan with just your naked eye.
Huh.
You can see major bridges. You know, if you fly over San Francisco, you can see you can see the Golden Gate Bridge. These things stick out pretty prominently. It's just surprising how clear everything is.
Right. Slicing the atmosphere through its thinnest point right over top of it versus looking out across it, out your window, as you mentioned, with all that atmosphere inhibiting your view.
Yeah, it distorts everything.
Yeah. Which is also why you get a sunburn between 11 and 2 o'clock and not at 7 in the morning or 7 at night, right?
Yes,
Because the
indeed.
sun has to travel through all that atmosphere.
Wear your sunscreen.
That's right. All this public service announcement brought to you by NASA.
Most, but not all, of the station windows have a special coating to minimize UV exposure.
But not all.
Well, some of them we don't want that because we want to do scientific experiment. We want to collect scientific data through them, and so those you have to be careful. Those, if you're in them for a handful of minutes without any protection, you can get burned.
How about that?
Yeah.
Also, do you put special cameras in those windows as well, or do you just shoot through the regular UV protected ones?
You can. We just use the regular cameras through. There may be other, more scientifically focused cameras, but I can take our standard camera and shoot out the ones without the UV filters as well.
Right.
The U.S. lab window wharf is not UV protected.
That makes sense. It's interesting.
Fortunately, the window that looks down doesn't necessarily take a lot of direct sunlight,
right?
Unless the station's in a weird orientation.
And what about reflected light off the ocean?
It's still bright.
Yeah.
And even with the UV coatings in the cupola, when the sun pops up, you can feel the heat of the sun on your face.
I bet.
Yeah, sun's pretty powerful.
Yeah, with no atmosphere to protect you at all. I mean, you're not that much farther away from the sun or closer to the sun than Earth is.
But you feel it.
Yeah.
I see Oleg getting out.
All right, we got one out. 3 to go. And they just go reverse order. The operation will look very similar tomorrow, as you mentioned, the Groundhog Day effect. But there are some things that they're not going to do, right? They're not going to sign the side of the White Room.
Yeah,
right?
It's your signature's there already.
It's already there. What else would you not do? I've stumped the astronaut, I think. Could be a trivia question.
Yeah. Other than sign, most of the things that you would do, are
again.
all scripted out. Yeah. Even the goodbyes, you're still going to take the opportunity to say goodbye.
Right.
Even though you said it a day before.
And here come our astronauts down the crew access arm. Looks like they're putting on rain jackets.
Ponchos. That's a new one for me. I did not get trained in the SpaceX rain poncho.
Well, now these are spacesuits that don't like water.
Indeed. They're not, not necessarily designed for that.
And they also carry umbrellas with them. The closeout crew does, so that extra layer of protection. But this is a first for me. I've not seen this before. if there is a shot that really exemplifies what we went through today, it's this one. Astronauts putting on rain ponchos with spacesuits on.
And so they come out of the gantry. They have to walk down a flight of stairs over to the elevator. And so we talked about the button in there that says space. There's also a button in there that says Earth.
Yes, that's right. Come back to Earth, everyone. There'll be another chance tomorrow. Rain on the lens tells the story. Now we have these passing rain clouds going over the pad. Of course, this was the reason for the scrub. At 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time today, we scrubbed the launch attempt of NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11 launch to the International Space Station. Now looking ahead to the next opportunity, tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage on NASA Plus and our streaming channels starts at 7:35 a.m. Eastern Time. And so next up, we are watching as the astronauts go down the tower, making their way to their Teslas, which are parked at the base of the launch pad where they left them earlier today, about 3 hours ago. And they'll get back in their ride and head back to astronaut crew quarters, the safe and comfortable confines of the operations and checkout building. We talked about the next opportunity for a launch tomorrow. One thing that will be considered, teams from SpaceX and NASA and the Commercial Crew Program will take a close look at that weather in the ascent corridor to see if it is worth taking a shot. Yes, they have the opportunity to go to the space station, but they will want to see if that situation is going to work out. If the weather's not too difficult to extract the crew from the Dragon should they have an emergency abort, come off the top of the rocket and splash down in the Atlantic Ocean. Fortunate for us, astronaut Nick Hague has changed his departure flight, so he's going to stay with us another day.
I'll be here.
Greatly appreciate it. You talk about the support of the crew in throughout the operations, both getting ready for launch and, of course, in this capacity for a scrub procedure. But there are thousands of people who came to see this launch today in person. There are hundreds of media, 222 credentialed media who are with us right here on site, who are here to document and report out the results of today's launch. And they all have to change their plans as well. Yeah. Hotels, stays, to reset for another attempt.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd think with that much of a ripple effect, that much momentum and inertia, to let's make this happen, that there'd be this go fever. And that just shows you how disciplined the process is to be able to say, nope, today's not the day. We're not comfortable with the way things are. We'll try again tomorrow. And, you know, it does put a huge ripple and a lot of change on everybody. And it stresses the team, but it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And the rainy ride back to astronaut crew quarters requires us to wipe the windshield if we're going to see out the front window. Did you bring an umbrella? Because we're in a studio where, you know, it's not a straight shot back to the press site.
I've got 10 feet to get to my car once that door's open, so I should be okay.
You're going to be all right?
I won't melt.
No, you don't have a black rain poncho on you?
No,
Stuff in your pocket.
I'm not critical spaceflight hardware.
Well, you are critical to our launch broadcast, I will tell you that, my friend.
It's been fun. It'll be fun to do it again.
Absolutely. We'll need you to bring all new material tomorrow.
My son would tell you it's just the same stories over and over. That looks like some serious rain out there.
Yeah, that's hitting the windshield a little harder than it was when you and I were outside watching the launch and just saw the rain off into the distance.
Yeah.
Seems like we've got the storms really built up. And this is the formula that we have. This is consistent July. Meteorologically speaking, in July, we hit the high point for thunderstorm activity and buildup. But it's not till August where we actually get the high for rain. That's according to Launch Weather Officer Melody Levin, who's over there at the 45th Space Wing.
Yeah.
So August is our high for rainfall events, and it really dumps rain. Not necessarily thunderstorms, because that's not the same. We get highs for thunderstorms in July. We get high rain totals in August. So August is, of course, the month that Floridians turn off the sprinklers and, you know, have to be concerned now about standing water. You saw the helicopter. Helicopter's still there with the team, with them on the security ride back to astronaut crew quarters. You know, they're not just there for TV purposes. They are there to keep an eye on everything and make sure that we don't have anybody who is somewhere they shouldn't be with regards to this crew.
Yep, critical support, security.
They just let us strap a broadcast camera on top of or underneath the helicopter, and it's very helpful, though. We want to thank them for that.
It gets amazing views.
They really do. And they're out there flying in the rain, so we appreciate their efforts today. They did a great job with those shots around the pad. Another key aspect, you know, for those of you who are still with us, as few as you are, NASA is required to provide a level of transparency. And so when the astronauts are in motion, whether it's a scrub or it's a path to the pad, we are required to let the American public and taxpayers know how we did it that day. We didn't go today, and so this is what we did instead. We detanked the rocket and we moved the crew from the rocket back to their crew quarters.
You know it's coming down when you can't see the VAB.
Yeah, you just see the shadow of it, just the outline of it right there, right? Yeah, you know you're in a good downpour. So again, for those of you who are still watching, want to emphasize we have an opportunity tomorrow, but like I was saying earlier, the teams at SpaceX and NASA are going to evaluate the weather downrange, and they're going to look at the entire picture to see if a launch attempt makes sense for tomorrow. But there is an opportunity tomorrow, should they need it. 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Broadcast start time 7:35 a.m. Eastern Time. We have opportunities as well on Saturday, August 2nd, and Sunday, August 3rd. When you get to August 4th, as we understand it from the launch planners, that is a day where we have to stand down because of the phasing that would be required. It's longer than the minimum 40 hours to get to the International Space Station. So August 4th is not on the table as a launch opportunity. But then the 5th, 6th, and 7th are.
Yeah. You know, and that really just helps protect for the back end of the mission when you have to undock, because you could have long phasing there. And the Dragon is certified for a certain number of hours to be free flight separate from the International Space Station. And so you don't want to use up its life just getting there.
Making the left-hand turn now from Saturn Causeway onto NASA Causeway. Halfway home to astronaut crew quarters. And I've been on the NASA Causeway when the security detail comes rolling down your way. There's always a little bit of a sinking feeling, because honestly, you never know if they're like they have a gigantic rocket right behind it and they need you to pull over and sit there and wait for them to go by, or if it's in this case, you know, not as often, but you've got an astronaut crew coming by, which is cool nonetheless. But they clear the roads, and you have to move over when you see that security car coming.
Yeah. It's fun to drive around KSC and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, because you just don't know what you're going to see on the road. And,
that's right.
And how often do you get stuck behind a rocket? You know?
It only happens here, right?
Only here.
And places where you launch, but it literally. And I can't help. I got to roll down the window, and I just have to gaze at this giant rocket booster moving down the road. And it's and many times it's flown to space.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, you know, flown space hardware going right by you on the middle of the road.
Yeah, this is a special place.
Right through the red light, as it should be. You see them with the 3 lanes and the road right there. On the other side, it's 2 lanes. So this side is used in the case of moving hardware. So if the hardware is large enough such that it won't fit on a 2-lane road, they got the 3-lane road as an option.
That's when you're talking big rockets.
Oh, you're talking real big stuff right there, yeah. And, you know, some of the hardware that is required to work on the rockets, right? That stuff is pretty large as well.
Yeah, it's amazing to, you know, you come out here and to get the glimpses of Artemis II and just the size and enormity of, you know, we've got Falcon 9 takes us to the International Space Station, and then you look at what it takes to get to the moon, and it's an order of magnitude more difficult.
Absolutely.
That's going to be an impressive launch to watch.
No doubt. And as you say, and have said many times before, with crew on it, not only is it an impressive rocket when it launches, talking about the Space Launch System, and Artemis II coming up early next year. We saw Artemis I back in 2022. But you've got just the enormity of that rocket blasting off. and the thunder and the power that it emits, just like you say, you got to have a lot of horsepower to get to the moon. Did you get a chance to go over to the VAB and see the SLS?
I haven't been on this trip.
That's true.
I will.
I'm sure. It's worth the price of admission. In your case, they will lay out the red carpet.
Yeah, they're over there doing some pretty key testing that happened to coincide. So they've got the Artemis 2 crew over there and doing some initial checkouts, and so it's exciting times. The mission's right around the corner, and before long, 4 of my friends are going to strap to the top of that and go visit the moon. How cool is that?
That is going to be. I'm really looking forward to that. So happy for Reed Wiseman and Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen, who I got to spend a lot of time with in Niagara Falls when we were covering the solar eclipse. They were saying the other day in a press conference that they have been around each other long enough now. They've for some years now training. They just know each other innately. They know when they might have a little mood shift. They know when maybe they're not feeling so well or don't want to talk, do want to talk.
Yeah.
It's just there's this unspoken thing, right? You know that person so well.
That's where you want to be as a crew.
That's right where you want to be, right? Yeah.
You want to be, so, we're in a dynamic situation. I almost know what you're going to do before you do it, or your nonverbal cues tell me everything that I need to know.
Yeah.
That's why we train the way we train.
That's a great way to put that. Period into that sentence there, because that is exactly where you want to be. Sometimes I look at the training, I'm like, wow, that's a long time training. But the better integrated you are, the more you know your crew member, your fellow crew members. That just, like you just said, that has to lend itself to a higher level of mission success. Well, it's the last leg here as we make our way. You can see the operations and checkout building on the left in view. Getting ready to wrap up our coverage here. The astronauts, they're up on the 3rd floor of that building. They have 26,000 square feet of bedrooms, workout facilities, medical checkouts, cafeteria.
Everything. You don't have to leave.
Don't have to go anywhere. And we are back to where we all started this thing, about 6 hours ago, Nick.
Yeah.
This was the starting point. Well, we really appreciate, if you're still with us, joining us for our launch attempt today, the attempted launch of Crew 11 by NASA and SpaceX. We were scheduled to launch at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time, but scrubbed out our attempt at 12:08, just about 1 minute and 7 seconds before we were set to lift off. We had a weather violation on the range inside the 10-mile radius area, had a cumulus cloud that just swooped on in and fouled the launch, the weather criteria. And so that's the way it goes. In the interest of safety, as we've said for the past hour or two, this is the reason that we have so much safety surrounding the astronauts and so many launch commit criteria. These criteria, when violated, we don't take any chances. We follow through and pull the crew out and reset for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety is paramount. Today's an example of that.
Want to thank all of our guests who were with us today. I want to thank SpaceX, of course, and the team over at Johnson Space Center for joining us on this launch attempt. And thank you, sir, Brigadier General.
My pleasure.
You'll be back tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Happy about that. We hope to see you there. And if we do choose that attempt for tomorrow, we will be on the air at 7:35 a.m. But stay tuned to our NASA social channels. We will update you with the latest information about which launch attempt we end up looking for. We've got a number of them, as I mentioned, going up to August 3rd. We skip the 4th and then have the 5th through the 7th. So stay tuned to our social media channels. We'll bring you the latest information on when that next launch opportunity will happen. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.